All right, I'm going to show you how I created this light sculpture here. Let's just dive right into it. This will be more of a relaxed, paced video because I really haven't even rehearsed this. I know what to do. All right, so first I'm going to go and get a cylinder. I'm going to go and model the light bulb that we use for it. So this is going to be, I'm going to do 64 on the vertices, and then let's go ahead and rotate it. Let's make the radius something like this. This is all, because it's just kind of straight up and down, it's relatively changeable throughout the extent of this. And then I'm going to go and get another cylinder. 90, I'm going to make it wider and then way less deep. These are going to be the little metallic pieces that are going to be in the middle and the ends. So make it right about that size and maybe a little bit wider. Cool. All right. So we'll take him and put him like this. I'm going to hit Alt D, bring him over here. And then we need one Alt D right in the middle. Boom. All right. I'm going to assume everything is sort of the way it's supposed to be. I'm going to go and get a bevel on all of these, and I actually manually beveled this to make it feel a little bit more round. But we're going to just do a simple bevel here to keep the ball rolling. And you can do whatever custom beveling you want. This, of course, is just going to keep it nice and simple. And then I'm going to hit Control L. And copy modifiers. Okay, cool. So now that's that. I'm going to go and maybe tighten up the bevel on this. I do want it to feel elegant to some degree, so a sharper bevel will encourage that. And then we need to paste that value on all of them. Cool. All right, so we're going to highlight this guy and we're going to move him out of the way. And because this will be technically a collection that we use in geometry nodes, we're going to need to destructively mesh them together unless there's a better way. I haven't really found a better way. So first what we're going to do is add the materials we need to add first before we combine them. So I'm going to click on the glass part and we're going to add we're just going to call it light, because this will eventually turn into our lights on the transmission. Just make that transmissive and then nice and rough. And then with this guy, shade smooth, though I want to bevel him first because that will affect the way it does smooth shading. So we're going to get a bevel node. Oops. I'm going to apply scale just in case. Cool. Now we can shade smooth and it'll look fine. So we'll go back to materials and you can tell if you remember how stretched out it was originally. And then for this guy, we're going to give it a nice, very shiny, maybe 0.07 on the roughness metal. And if you'll notice, I added the metal material here, but it automatically added it here. That's because when I duplicated the objects, I hit Alt-D and not Shift-D. If you're following along and you did Shift-D, you're going to need to do that, add it to both. But this is the light bulb. So what I'm going to do is highlight it. I'm going to hit M and add it to the bulb collection just so they're here. And then what I'm going to do is now hit Shift-D. And so that we're not being destructive on the original model. And then I'm just going to highlight these guys. I'm going to hit Control J. Here we go. I think it worked. It did. Okay, hitting Control J. If you'll notice, if I go to edit mode, it selects everything, right? It's now one mesh. Rather, this is multiple objects, this is one. And that just makes our lives a little bit easier in geometry nodes. Because the design has already been decided, I don't need to go jump through the hoops of trying to keep this the same. And also, anchor points. this makes anchor points easy because I just have to deal with one. So I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to hit Tab to go to edit mode. I'm going to hit A just to select everything. And I want my anchor point, which is this thing, to be at the very bottom. I'm just going to hit G and move it right there. So now that my anchor point is where I want it to be, I'm ready to get into geometry nodes. So I'm going to get a plane. I'm going to title it we're going to call it sculpture. And then let's head, actually we'll just make a new window and get in the geometry nodes editor. Bam. All right, I'm gonna hit in. Now we'll click new, and we need the base object is going to be an icosphere. So now we have that. I'm gonna go out of material preview. I'm gonna hit period just to center this guy out. And then we're gonna do 2 subdivisions, and we're gonna get an instance on points. Where are we at here? Plug that there. And then what's nice is we need to go to the combined bulb right there. So we're just going to call this bulb and then click back on the sculpture. Now as you can see it, just click and drag right in there, that one that we joined everything in. And that's going to allow you to put that right into the instance, as you can see here. Now we're going to have a problem with, which is, how do we get them all to point outward? This is something I've tackled on the channel a couple times, and what you're going to need to get is a normal node, so it can recognize the normals of the icosphere, and we're going to need to get a line Euler to vector node. So plug normal into vector, and then plug rotation into rotation, and we're going to hit Z, and that is going to solve our problem. And then all you have to do is here on the radius of the original icosphere that we can't see because it's now an instance, you can bring those in a little bit. Now, for me, it's a little too spiky, and the bulb is a little too it's too skinny, I think. So what you can do here in the scale is adjust it in geometry nodes, and that's because we modeled it to where there's no like curves and stuff. So it really keeps it looking nice. While still being able to adjust the thickness of our original light bulb, and I really like that. So now we have this. I'm going to zoom in and then bring that radius in a little bit. And now we need an object to go in the middle so that they're all kind of, you would imagine like the inside of it has all the bolts connecting it. And the way we're going to do that is get in a join geometry node, get another icosphere, and plug that into the geometry. Now you can see them show up there. I'm going to bring my subdivisions up, get a set shade smooth, if I can find it. There we go. And then we can bring his radius down, which I'm just going to get my cavity and my shadow. Not just cavity. We're going to bring the radius down of this object. Cavity makes it easier for me to see when they intersect. So there we go. Now they're all connected, and our object is, for the most part, made. Now let's go for kind of the fun part, which is animating the light on the bulb, which was like such a cool thing when I was designing it originally. It was such a cool moment. So we will head into shading, and we'll put a material on him later, but that doesn't really matter. So what I'm going to do is, design the, what's going to be on the bulb. There's a lot of things going on that makes it really cool. There's the lights turning on and off. There's the lights phasing the animation, the color, all of that weirdness. So we're going to do that. So first, let's do kind of a proof of concept here. And I am going to edit this in cycles just so I know sort of final product look. And I'm going to bring in HDRI. So here we go. This is the bomb diggity. So let's turn on some emission, and that's going to be right here. So now we have some emission. And the first thing I did before we played with the phase was get some of these lights to turn on and turn off. So we need to get a mix shader, get another principled, but in this case, not on with no emission, just plain glass. Plug that into the shader, and we need to get a color ramp, a wave texture this time, and a object info node. And the object info node is able to recognize that it's the same object, but created as instances so you can kind of dance around with some things. So we're going to use the random socket, plug that here, and then you'll notice if we bring in the white portion, it turns on and turns off some of the objects randomly. But notice how some of them are like brighter than the others because this is a smooth gradient. I want to bring that in a little bit, and then you can play with the phase offset to animate that. So now that we have that, I just wanted to get that kind of set up for the most part. And then now what you can do is add in we're going to get a volume, principled volume, plug that into volume, and so that, bring that density up. So that kind of adds this kind of thickness inside of the glass. It's just an effect that I really liked the way it looked. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. But now let's animate our color. So we can minimize him and minimize him, so we can focus on just him. And we'll get a gradient texture. And I'm going to hit Control-T with the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. We're going to use the object coordinate, and we're going to plug this right into color. And then we are going to need a color ramp like this. And then now we need to find, okay, so the gradient is that direction. So we do need to adjust the Y by 90 degrees. And then we can kind of see, okay, cool. So the gradient is working. So we like this. So let's go ahead and establish the original colors that I had established. So if you hit the plus icon on the color ramp, you can get new little nodes to add color. And then you can use the location to move these things around. So we like that. And then let's go, and looks like we had 2 black nodes. We had a light blue, and we had a nice vibrant orange. Cool. So this was the original color, and then this gradient obviously doesn't look that great. So there's a couple things we need to do. We need to add a B-spline to make it a very, very smooth fall off. And then here on the scale, bring it down to like something like this. And then now we have this. So what I want to do is stretch out this gradient until it's touching the edges of our scene. And, each time is different. My numbers were a little bit different on my original, but you get the idea. All right, so this is it. This was the original idea. And then what I did was like, okay, let me go ahead and add in a hue saturation value node, and we can play with the hue, and that animates it. So let's quickly do an animation. My original animation was only 120 frames long, so I'm going to bring up a timeline, and then I'm going to go to my preferences and make sure that my default animation interpolation is linear. So we'll go back to frame 0. On the hue, we'll start at 0. We'll go to the end and type in 1, which gives you a full cycle, so it starts and begins at the same color. And then if we just look at the animation, very slowly cycles, right? And then I'm going to go and maybe crunch in a little bit. I'm looking at my original piece, by the way, so I'm kind of cheating here. But you can see the color, slowly moves. And then I went ahead and I cranked up the saturation to get this cool thing, right? And it looks like I'm at 250. I'm at 120. I was like, why is it so slow? There we go. There we go. Okay, that's much better. The fewer frames, the faster, the better the effect, I think. And so it started to do that once I crunched in the color ramp. And then it's like, all right, well, because there is gradients available, especially right up in here, we can really take advantage of this. So what I'm going to do is start adding more color ramps to this whole system to make it look even more interesting. So what I did then was I added another color ramp, COL, got a color ramp here, reverted it back to black and white, and then let's see, brought one here, got a guy here, we'll get another node, make it pure white, and then we'll get another black node here to kind of create this interesting look. So it's taking advantage of all the sort of strangeness that was created, and you can add more nodes to this whole thing to create even more looks. This is completely and entirely editable to what you want to do. And you can add texture to it. I have not tried adding texture. I kind of liked the simplicity of what is kind of already going on here. All right, so now that it's doing that, we can then reintroduce the original colors back into this. So I'm just going to hit Shift D and add those colors back. And now we have the original piece. And you can always like take like, hey, let's go ahead and flip the color ramp on this and try this. That obviously doesn't look very good. But everything is now totally changeable as you move your color ramp around and add new things. Say we can flip color ramp. Oh, that I think we're going to land on this. But that's how we create this really weird, but I mean, just super cool, cool looking animation on this design. So that's where we're at so far. So we're now at the point where we can kind of start creating the environment that this whole thing exists in. I do want to make our bulbs a little thicker. There we go. All right. So let's create the environment that I put this whole thing in. So it's a very simple room. So let's design our room. Now, the project file is available to you, but the ground and wall materials are not. Those are from Grayscale Gorilla. They're just materials that I'm kind of getting to know. So I used them on this project when I was kind of goofing around with it. So go ahead and use probably ambient CG. So you can go ahead and use any material you want. So I hope that's how you spell concrete. So go ahead and like steal some concrete materials and some wall materials and just download the 4K PNGs for those, or just kind of keep everything white. That still looks like a museum at the same rate. So we're going to bring them up. We're going to get a nice floor. And then we do need a bit of a cube, which I hate working with cubes in this way, but we'll work with it. I'm going to bring my anchor point like this. There we go. We can do something like this. And this is why I hate it. Then I have to bring the wall, the ceiling back down like that. And then I can remove things. So now we have this as its own separate thing. And then let me resort to my original composition, which he was closer to the corner, so that we can see the corner, see the lights, see the string. Seeing the corner was important to me. I just liked the way that looked in the composition. I didn't want just like a plain flat wall. That looked lame. And then when it comes to the lighting, having a bevel on this is important. So we're going to add because if you don't add a bevel, it will be harder for it to actually look like there is a corner here. So added a bevel, shade smooth. What I'm going to do is we need to get another cylinder, and then let's see. There we go. He's right here. So get another cylinder. This is the string that's holding it, and then make it just very, very thin. Cool. And then can't really see it, can we? So we'll just eyeball it. We don't need to eyeball it. We'll just do this. I'm hitting G to just kind of bring it to the middle. We don't want it sticking down at the bottom. We just need it coming through the top. Cool. Now, we don't want it doing that. So I'm just going to hit R twice and rotate it till the string is, there we go, in a sense holding this guy. And I'm gonna save this project file. You can see all my other attempts here. And we'll just go. All right, so now we have this. We need to we need to model the rope, the wire that is coming out of this thing, and that's going to be done with that is going to be done with some curves. So we can take this curve here, get a path. I'm going to hit RY90 to bring it up. I'm going to scale it down and then bring it kind of to the side. I do want to play with the anchor point. I want the anchor point to be at the top. So I'm going to hit tab. And the anchor points on these are a little bit more confusing. Actually, no, not anymore. When I originally did it, it was. I don't know. There we go. So now we have that, and let's go ahead and bring it over to a location where we can get, get it to point out. I'm hitting G to just kind of move it around. Place it wherever you want to place it. I kind of want to place it right here. And then I'm going to hit R twice to move it around. But I want it to just kind of come down like this. So that's probably a really good spot for it. And then we can, we can decide what makes sense as we go. And then we can add, now we can go ahead and add some geometry to this chord. So I'm going to go here, go to geometry and bring the depth up. There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and select our camera composition because that's going to help me with just figuring everything out. So I'm going to get a camera here, Control-Alt-0, snap it to view, which did not do what I wanted. So I'm hitting G and middle click. I'm going to use the Instagram format, so 960 by 1080. And then I'm just going to, I hit R twice just to kind of rotate it. I don't know if this is the original composition that I used. And then we'll bring it a little bit closer to the ground and in the middle of our camera view. There we go. So now the reason why I did that is because I want to edit the chord in camera view to a degree. And then what I can do is hit tab, click this guy. I'm going to hit E, E, and we're just eyeballing this really. This is, there we go. Very kind of run and gun way to do the chord, but it really, this is not the very important part of the design. Cool. Now we have that. And then what you can do now is add a little bit of fun to it. So you can take this guy and then if you want to like move them all at the same time, you can use proportional editing up here, and then use your scroll wheel to goof with it there. All right. So now we have a, a chord coming out of it that represents, the power to the whole thing. And then let's see how it looks right now in cycles. There's our guy. Last thing that I need to do in terms of like big, things to do is the lights coming off from the ceiling that really provides the lighting for the whole thing. So what we're going to need is another cylinder. We're just, is this a bad joke to say that we're flying on all cylinders? Okay. All right. So we'll make him smaller, much wider. There we go. All right. And then what I want to do is just add 2 materials to this guy. I'm going to hit period just to kind of center it out. Add a bevel node. Like that. And then I'm going to click on the bottom face here. Right here, I'm going to go to edit mode, faces, and I'm going to hit I. So what I'm going to do is go to material preview. Just keep it at, did I make it metallic? Let me look at my original piece. I did. So I made them that metallic material, and then this middle one, I added a new emission, and then I clicked assign with that face selected. So now they're going to be supplying the light. So, and I created those roof lights with a new geometry nodes setup. So I'm going to go ahead, get a plane. I'm going to call it light grid. I'm going to take this guy and call him little light. this little light of mine, light grid, put it up here. And then we'll head into a new window. We'll go back to the Geometry Nodes editor. There we go. And we just want to use a grid. Like this. And then bring up that size. And then if I go here to wireframe, we can see, okay, how many lights do we want to add to this scene? And we'll just kind of judge that as we go. And then get a instance on points. And then little light, put it here. And then you can then edit the size of the lights and like how far apart they are and all that fun stuff. And we can go ahead and get them on our ceiling. So I just want them to be barely touching. Okay. And then I'm gonna hit G and align them properly. So that's too many lights. So what we're gonna do is bring our vertices like that. Let me look at my original composition. A little different, but I think that'll do. And let's go into cycles, and then we'll click on the little light, click on that material, and bring up our brightness like this. Okay, cool. So with the camera, I'm gonna bring it lower to the ground. I'm gonna hit R twice to bring it up. This more closely matches my original composition. So on this floor, I'm just gonna go ahead and add in a concrete material. That's the one I got from Grayscale Gorilla. But like I mentioned, you can grab one totally for free and incredible quality on Ambient CG. Totally free stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. All right. And then I'm going to just go ahead and put in that polished concrete just like that. And then the wall and the ceiling all had the same material, which is kind of a plaster. I want to see if these guys have a plaster. Oh yeah, okay, so you could still use essentially what I used. So this guy, he's pretty close. So I would download him, which is another concrete, but it's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that. And then just go ahead and apply that. There we go, and he needs to be tiled. So we'll head into the shading. If you don't know how to tile image texture, see how that's just like huge? We'll go into Eevee actually. See how that looks just massive? Might be even stretched a little bit, but you can go here to the mapping node and basically make that look a little smaller. All right. And even though like the default wall is white, I think adding materials still is important. And so I'm going to bring in more light into the scene, and then on the bulb, we can find the emission here. Here we go. Nope. Must be the top one. There we go. Let's head back to shading. I want to make the actual bulbs that are animating. I want their light to be a little bit brighter. It's kind of dim. It doesn't stand out. So let's go and bring up the strength of those, but we don't want to overblow it. There we go. And then this wire here, we're just going to give it a black material. Just a black electrical wire. All right, cool. So we have that. We have that going for itself. And then in this case, I have the scene world. So let's bring it back to normal, something like this. And then you can go back to little light, maybe bring the brightness down a little bit. This is all up at this point, just all entirely up to your preference. And then one thing that I added, so if we click back on the bulb, this is the last thing to do in the shading tab specifically. So click on bulb. Remember how I mentioned you can turn on and turn off certain things. I do want to animate that. And I used a wave texture because it's so easy. So bring your phase offset to 0. I'm going to go back to frame 0 here. I'm going to hit I, go to the very end, and I'm going to type in 2 asterisk pi, which is going to make that animation loop seamlessly. And so now some of them are going to turn off and turn on very organically. The viewer is probably not even going to realize, but it's still making a noticeable effect. And then with that being said, let's just render out a frame and see how it looks. I'm going to make it 4K. It's not really 4K, but let's render that out. All right, and we're finished. This this back wall on the ceiling, I would tile that material even more. It's a little stretched, but I'm just gonna leave it as is. But you guys are gonna have access to this project file attached in here on Patreon, so you can go ahead and grab the project file, check out my original settings from the animation you saw on YouTube. But with that being said, that is the walkthrough of how I created this animation. We have 2 more to go. See you guys in those.